Universities with links to China's military bought supermicro servers with restricted NVIDIA chips. Meanwhile, 2 Chinese companies and 6 Chinese nationals have been indicted in a fentanyl crackdown, and the U.S. banning foreign-made internet routers over security concerns. Joining us now to talk about these issues is Steve Yates, Senior Research Fellow for China and National Security at the Heritage Foundation. Steve, good afternoon. So good to have you here today. Now, 4 Chinese universities, including 2 linked to the People's Liberation Army, this is China's military, it bought computer servers with restricted AI chips in them. So, Steve, to start off here with the basics, what is the concern here that when China gets these restricted NVIDIA chips, what is it going to do?
Well, this is a super important topic, and it's one that a lot of us as laymen, not really experts in the technology, it's hard sometimes to understand why it matters so much. But I think we're in a very important strategic race for the future. It involves space, it involves AI, and these advanced chips are at the heart of all of this. If we just look at the weapon systems that were used very effectively to protect civilians in the broader Middle East in this current conflict, a lot of that has to do with space technology, and AI getting applied to defense technology, and having the cutting edge on that is the difference between life and death, victory and defeat. And so these chips are basically what has been keeping the United States ahead of China in this race. China has some advantages in this competition, but American innovation and manufacturing together with TSMC's manufacturing and engineering are basically what has been keeping us at the forefront.
So then how do we stop China from getting these chips? I mean, we have export controls, but it appears China is still getting these chips.
Well, there's always the problem of espionage, and whether it's industrial espionage or classical espionage. And we have to be wiser and smarter about how to increase our guardrails against that. We do have some export controls, but there's been some fuzziness about export controls, and it's still a controversial subject in some quarters of Silicon Valley more broadly, and the intersection with Washington. So there has been debate about what level of NVIDIA chips are okay to sell to China. There's still, I think, a sensitivity, even with legacy chips going out. Hard to control, but a lot of advanced systems have a lot of legacy chips involved in them, and it's very important not to have that supply completely consumed or controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And so the advanced chip edge, vital. And we have to have allies in the White House and on the Hill that are setting standards that help protect that edge.
So, I mean, one way I think I've heard, at least, that China is getting these chips is through middle countries or third countries where, those countries buy these restricted chips and then export them to China. It just seems to me there are a lot of gaps, if you will, that China could be potentially getting these chips. I mean, how do we even approach this?
Well, you're correct about the sort of third party or third point of contact kind of loophole. There are technological ways to guard against that. And just as there are penalties for Americans who disclose or leak these kinds of things, there are ways of sanctioning and penalizing third parties who are responsible for doing that too. And if we're serious about it, we have to follow through on that. This is very much a Cold War mentality. Some people in the current era are averse to thinking in these terms and acting in these terms, and some of our allies and high-tech partners are not ready for that. But I think that when it comes to Japan, Taiwan, and some other geographies that are very important to this AI and chip race, they are understanding of the need to have clean supply chains and to protect the engineering and the hardware that is related to keeping this edge. So we just have to have clean networks. We have to have high standards and accountability among our partners, and we're going to have to enforce when there's leakages.
Okay, Steve, we do have a couple of topics to get through today. I'll just ask you one more question on this chips issue. We've had a guest here on the show who made this argument. I'm very much curious as to what you say to this. And this person said, NVIDIA needs a market to sell its chips into so that it has the money for R&D to develop much more advanced chips for the U.S. and restricting that market could potentially actually slow down U.S. development. What do you say to this?
Well, I just flatly say too bad. You're going to have to make your business dependent on a supply chain that is safe for American national security interests, our allies' national security interests. And if that requires a time of transition, then begin that transition. This is not a challenge that has snuck up on NVIDIA or anyone else. This has been hotly debated and analyzed for the better part of the last decade. And I am just not open to, and I don't think any serious American national security expert or top elected official can have sympathy for those who say, I need to sell to the power that is most likely to steal my technology and hurt my country. And so we have to be very, very clear about that. That's the starting point in understanding the environment we operate in. And we don't really have a choice. That's the environment China itself is creating. And so we have to accept that reality and begin to adapt. It is doable. And I have a lot of support for the government and others trying to aid in that transition, but it has to move in the direction of security.
Okay, well said, Steve. So another issue, 6 Chinese citizens and 2 China-based pharmaceutical companies being charged with selling and delivering chemical agents to manufacture fentanyl. So what is the significance here? Because China reportedly cooperated in this investigation.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. As many of you in your audience know, I have a daughter who was killed by fentanyl, so I feel this topic very, very viscerally on a personal level. But I also have worked on this for the better part of the last decade as a policy matter. I think this is a sign of some progress in the U.S. government leaning into this subject matter and trying to press for greater cooperation from China. I would say that these limited cases are literally the least the Chinese government can do to demonstrate cooperation. The scale of this problem is such that at least 500,000 Americans have been killed by this scourge, and the CCP-related entities are tied to the manufacture, export, and laundering of money tied to it. So I would congratulate those working hard for progress. This is a step in the right direction. This is not an indication of a good faith down payment on the part of the Chinese Communist Party to actually stop this flow. Much more needs to be done, and Sarah Carter of the Office of National Drug Control Policy has made that very, very clear. I strongly support her efforts.
I just want to extend my condolences to your daughter. This is the first time I'm hearing about this, so I'm very sorry to hear about that, Steve.
Thank you.
But, you know, China's cooperation here, I can't help but wonder, because I've been covering China for a number of years. I've seen its track record. I just have to question this, and I'll have you respond. Is it just for show, or is it of meaningful consequence?
Well, I think that it's meaningful in the following limited sense. The Chinese Communist Party knows how to do the pageantry of summits. They know how to have some give and take with American and other counterparts to try to set those things up. They know that President Trump has made a priority on fentanyl because he did impose a 20% tariff that was reduced to 10. The Supreme Court has complicated that at this point, but President Trump has made clear this topic matters to him, but he's open to cooperation if it's serious and nets real results. So now we're sort of at the place where the rubber has to meet the road. We have to have clear evidence that the supply chains are getting clean of Chinese inputs on the illicit chemical precursors. That's the standard. There may have been some progress, but it's incremental. Yes, there has to be prosecutions, but frankly, China could very publicly shut down and prosecute offending manufacturers inside China if it wanted to do a good faith demonstration of progress.
Okay, we'll see what happens when President Trump meets with the Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. Okay, just one last issue here. The FCC said it was banning the import of all new foreign-made consumer routers. And with that being said, China is estimated to control at least 60% of the U.S. market in this front. What are your thoughts on this latest move by the FCC?
Well, number one, I just couldn't be more enthusiastically in support of the leadership of Commissioner Carr, the Chairman Carr. I think he has had a very clear mind about the national security threat in our communications space. This has been a critical vulnerability for a very, very long time. And there have been instances now with evidence with Volt and Salt Typhoon that this is a critical vulnerability that makes our critical infrastructure and maybe some other systems at risk. So this matters for our government and defense systems, but also for our household and consumer systems. And so I applaud the move. This is necessary. It might be costly in some ways and enforcing some changes in equipment for a lot of people, but this is really a step in the right direction.
Okay, Steve, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let's just leave it there for today. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
A pleasure. Thank you so much.
The Treasury announcing a historic change to American currency, saying